Vincent, PetroChina released its first half results today. China's biggest oil and gas company, once the biggest company in the world at one point. Let's concentrate on the numbers first. What did they say about the company?
Well, I think two things that they tell us. One is that PetroChina has a good deal of operational momentum. You know, it's one of the few oil companies that managed to get its production up in the first half. It was up 4.4%. Exxon's was down 2.7% in the first half. So you can sort of see the difference between the two of them. And it has a bit of earnings momentum too. It has, its profits were a little bit higher. So I think that what you see is that PetroChina and also CNOOC, the other Chinese oil company which reported earlier in the week, that sort of operationally and from an earnings perspective, they have the kind of momentum at the moment that their international peers don't have.
And for our listeners that spend most of the time looking at international majors, how should they consider these Chinese companies? Because it's sometimes a bit confusing with their role with the state and onshore and offshore and so on.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that what you can say about PetroChina and CNOOC together is that they are still national oil companies, still NOCs, but really becoming international oil companies, becoming IOCs. PetroChina, I think PetroChina's model is probably Exxon actually. It wants to get to that level of production, wants to get to that level of sort of steadiness, if you like. And CNOOC is more, it's a totally E&P company, so it's totally upstream. So I think the comparison that's often used for CNOOC is Statoil. So they have international models that they want to sort of try and emulate, but they are growing quite fast. They're acquiring, and they have a huge domestic market that they won't be able to satisfy because they'll never be big enough to satisfy Chinese oil demand. So I think that's a distinguishing factor relative to the IOC peers that I think makes them stand out.
I mean, they have the advantage of a sort of oligopoly status within China. Production growth is slightly better than the internationals at the moment. They're looking for oil like everybody is, but they also have this strange instrument of the state type position domestically too, don't they?
Absolutely they do, yes. And they are very much sort of instruments of state policy in China, both domestically and internationally. The acquisition of oil reserves is a major part, I think, of Chinese energy policy in the long term. China wants to control more of its own oil and gas reserves, whether they're in China or outside China. That's why these companies are buying stuff. I mean, CNOOC last year bought Nexen, this Canadian company. PetroChina has invested in Mozambique. It may be about to invest in Iraq. So they're very ambitious on the investment front. I think the big question for investors about them is, will they be able to have the cash to finance all of these investments? Do they have the sort of patience to see them through? How will they get their returns on capital? All those metrics that investors should look at. I think they will need to be more transparent on those fronts going forward.
Well, it's interesting that a number of those points are not unique to Chinese oil companies. It's equivalent for many sectors in the country. Thank you very much for that update, Vincent.